Samanitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Harabhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Prabhajantam Anapetyam Apeti Krityam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tam Mayatayottara Bhopanedustam Sarvabhutam Hridayam Munimanatoshmi Bhaktiya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shiptascha Karmadi Tarangamadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Prinde Namaste Charanarabindam Vajami Radam Aravinda Netram Smarami Radam Madhurashmitasyam Vadami Radam Karuna Baradram Tatoma Manasti Katina Kapi. I first of all offer millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotar Sarashishimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotar Sarashishimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all our most illustrious Rupanuga Guru Vargya and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to all of you. So we're resuming our Jaiva-Dharma reading study, and today was a very special day. We had blessed with the darshan of Lord Jagannath, traveling back to the mandir, so very auspicious day today. So now we're coming to our Falshruti text 6, which is on top of page 830. Jade Dvaita Jnani Haya.
Jade Dvaita Jnana Heya Chitta Upadaya Krishna Bhakti Chiradina Upaya.
Such knowledge, which is solely related to the duality of this dull material world, is fit to be rejected. So we had a long discussion about duality. Duality basically means the distinction between Krishna and the jiva. Ultimately, I mean, there's night and day, meeting, separation, happiness and distress, all kinds of different dualities, but the ultimate duality is the distinction between Krishna and the jiva. And if that's not understood, then if it's material and if the jiva is thinking that he is Krishna, the enjoyer, then this is the product of dull material reality, or duality, sorry. Whereas transcendental knowledge of the divine duality within the spiritual world should be accepted forever within one's heart. Yes, so there's mundane duality, that I am God, and then there's spiritual divine duality, which means I am a servant of God. So there's always two, regardless, within one's heart, both as the upaya, means of attainment, and the upaye, the goal worthy of attainment. Go ahead.
Jiva kabu jadanai, hari kabu nai, hari saha jiva achintya veda abheda mai.
The jiva is not a product of dull matter. You see, this next verse is opening out the previous verse, what we just said. The jiva is not a product of dull matter, nor is he Kevaladvaita. It's absolutely one in all ways with Sri Hari. That's the material conception of duality. He's just explained it himself. Amazing. Each time he just opens out what he's previously said. The jiva is inconceivably different and non-different from Hari. This is Achintya Veda Abheda Tattva. Achintya, inconceivable, Veda, different, Abheda, non-different. So this is what's going to be described in Jaiva-Dharma. And this is this Falshruti is what we call the ontological truths that run throughout the Jaiva-Dharma that are going to be substantiated. Okay.
Deha kabu jivanai dara bhogyanai dasha bhogya jiva Krishna Prabhu bhokta hai.
The material body should never be considered to be the jiva, and this earth is not for the jiva to exploit and enjoy. The jiva's swarup is Krishna Das, and thus he is meant for Krishna's enjoyment, whereas Sri Krishna's swarup is Prabhu, master, and bhakta, enjoyer. I mean, there is so much in that one paragraph. I've been really inspired by this Falshruti over the last couple of months, reading it every single day. And each day, newer and fresher meanings actually emerge from them, because this is a transcendental literature. This is not a novel. This is not something just written out of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's imagination. It was written in his Samadhi Bhasya. Yesterday, we were describing how the deity is manifested from the deep absorption of the bhakta's meditation, and the form is revealed. The form descends within the heart of the practitioner, and then he reveals that form, and that's the form of the deity. Similarly, this Grantha is exactly the same. It was revealed in his meditation. It was channeled. This book took 2 months to write, only 2 months, from top to bottom. So this is 40 chapters. I mean, it's very, very dense in every paragraph, and the language and the construction and everything about it is phenomenal. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur was just channeling the whole masterpiece. Okay.
जैवधर्मे नहीं आच्छे देह धर्म कथा नाहि आच्छे जीव ज्ञाने मायावाद प्रथा.
This book, entitled Jaiva-Dharma, neither discusses matters related to the dead material body, nor does it propound the Mayavad doctrine of the jiva's oneness with Brahm. So both these conceptions of the gross Maya, that means the sense objects attraction, or the Jnani's attraction to merge into Brahman and become like God completely. So both of these, on both levels, the gross and the subtle enjoyments, are rejected. They have nothing to do with this treatise, this Jaiva-Dharma.
जीव नित्य धर्म भक्ति ताहे जड़नाय शुद्ध जीव प्रेम सेवा फले पाय ताय.
The jiva's nitya dharma is bhakti, devoid of material motivation. The jiva, purified by seva, attains the fruit of that seva in the form of prem. So again, this is a very, very powerful statement by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Only his nitya dharma. This is like the verse Anyabhilasata shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam. Has no gyan, no karma, and it's beyond this material world, which is uttam bhakti. Krishnano shilanam bhakti uttama. This is describing uttam bhakti. Okay, so that's our Falshruti glorification for today. And now we'll come to our chapter 11, this conversation with the Mula. So we were discussing yesterday about the manifesting of the deity, which is what the Mulla's objection was, to not worship matter. This was his principal objection, because in Islam, they don't even have a form of Allah. They don't conceive of a form of Allah, which means it's a completely impersonal philosophy. It's an impersonal religion. If you don't have a form that you can worship, that you know is variegated, that you can offer foodstuffs to, etc., how can you absorb it into your full daily activities? How is it possible to do that? It's constantly, he's criticizing, saying that having a form is imaginary. But the point is, not having a form is even more imaginary, isn't it? Because it's like you're just imagining the void and doing everything to a formless entity. And we often give the example like light. One of the descriptions of Allah is that He is light. But have we ever heard of a light that doesn't have a source? Is there such a thing as light without a source? We have the sunlight, the sun. We have electric light, the electric powerhouse. We have lightning, you know, the
Clouds. Okay.
elements, you know, within the clouds, etc. We have a torchlight, moonlight. They've all got objects, firelight. You can't have light without an object. It just doesn't exist. So from that, it doesn't seem very logical to appreciate that if Allah is represented as light without a form. When we said the other day, these are Kali Yuga religions, which there's two meanings to that. One is that these are religions that have only manifested during this Kali Yuga. There was no Islam before the advent of Kali Yuga. 10,000 years ago, there was no Islam. It began with Muhammad, maybe 800 years after Christ, I think, something like that. And Christianity began approximately more than 2,000 years ago. So these are very recent religions that have their origins in the Veda. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says in his Shikshamrita that any religion that has anything of value, it has to have a strain, it has to have a particle of the Vedic teachings within it. Just like the Mayan civilization in South America, or the Incas, they all have some tiny particle of teaching from the Vedas, which gives them some potency. Without that, but the full potency only comes from the Vedas. Originally, Parikshit Maharaj was the emperor of the world. Well, that was 5,000 years ago. So 5,000 years ago, India, Bharatvash, was the ruling country of the world for millions and billions of years. Swayambhuva Manu going right back to there, in Satya Yuga, etc. It all emanated from India. And Europe, etc., were just barbarian places filled with trees and lower caste men. That's how it was in Vedic times. They didn't have the Aryan culture spread, although the Aryan culture was understood, but they didn't have these other religions. They weren't even there. Because the last chapter we read, chapter 10, was about the authenticity of the Vaishnava Dharma, which goes right back to the very beginning. But if you take the authenticity of Christianity or Islam, it doesn't go back very far really at all. Okay, so do you remember where we got up to? I think we got up to the bottom of page 254. I'll read this paragraph anyway, and then I'll read again through. If we did it yesterday, no harm going again. So the mullah, he says, there is no fault if one performs internal bhajan of God in a mood of love and externally engages in the worship of the deity. So he's agreeing to something. However, how can it be worship of God to worship a dog? However, how can it be worship of God to worship a dog, a cat, a serpent, or a debauchee? Our revered prophet, Paigambara Sahib, has vehemently condemned such worship of material objects. Gaurachandra. All human beings are grateful to God. No matter how many sins they commit, occasionally they become aware that God is the supreme entity, and when they are endowed with this belief, they bow down before the extraordinary things of this world. There's an expression in English, there are no atheists in the trenches. You know, during the war, when bullets are flying over your head, everyone's praying to somebody. All are praying to somebody. They may claim to be an atheist, but actually, when the plane is about to crash or the bullets are flying overhead, everyone suddenly finds they have an innate belief in God. It's very, very, very rare that somebody will completely say, well, I'm still God, even in the face of death like that. But the point is that he's making here is the worship of objects. And when they are endowed with this belief, they bow down before the extraordinary things of this world. Yes, once you are touched by a mood of God consciousness, then the mountains, the rivers, the lakes, the
creatures of this world. My friend was just writing to me earlier today, saying he's reading one beautiful book. I forgot what it's called, but it's a history that's written 100 years after Mahaprabhu. Fascinating book. And in there, the teacher and the student, the teacher is explaining how many, they're in a forest, and he's explaining how many living entities are around them. And all these living entities have consciousness. The trees have consciousness, the plants have consciousness, the ants have consciousness, the frogs have consciousness, everything has, the grasses have consciousness, everything has consciousness. So this whole material world is filled with consciousness. We also, the symptom of the soul is consciousness. So when one comes to that platform of appreciating the all-encompassing consciousness on the planet, and then even more than that, that there must be a supreme consciousness to have manifest all these individual consciousnesses, then one becomes a theist, one becomes a follower of God. Very easily it becomes like linked and connected to the Supreme. When ignorant people are inspired by their gratitude to God, they naturally offer respect to the sun, a river, a mountain, or to the enormous animals. They express their hearts before such things and display submission to them. Actually, when the Aryans first went to Europe in about 3,000 3,000 years ago, the Brahmins, they taught deity worship. They taught, yes, worship the sun, honor the mountains, honor the first harvests, honor all these things. And then they even constructed wooden deities of those. And that became called paganism. And then Christianity came and said, no, this is all wrong. You shouldn't worship the sun as being God or a part of God. You should only worship Christ. So then they destroyed all of that. This was the first Christians coming in the Western countries. Like in Britain, they had groups called the Druids and people like this who would teach this worship of God in every aspect. But the Christian philosophy destroyed that completely, so that they lost all respect, actually, for the earth, for Mother Earth. And from there, then they began the abuse of Mother Earth, which we see today in its extremity. So much is abused on the earth. Mountains are blown up to put roads through, etc. Nothing is worshipped, nothing is sacred. You know, oil pipes are put across beautiful lakes that sometimes the oil pipes can break and completely contaminate the lake and stop all the drinking water for thousands of miles, etc. So all these things have been taken over in the name, because we were mentioning earlier Christianity and so on. But Christianity gives faith to people in something that is of goodness. So they have that point. So that is good there. But there's many other aspects that don't complete the whole saintly picture. Because an intelligent, wise person will want to see everything. If someone has intelligence and logic, he wants to see the whole rationale. That's why the scriptures are so profuse, to allow us to fully develop our higher intellect, our higher state of consciousness with great confidence. Yes, and this creates the faith. Shraddha Shabde Vishvasa Koi. This Vishvasa means confidence. When you have faith, you have confidence. When you have confidence, you can open up the recesses of the consciousness and then come closer to Krishna. Elevate ourselves. They express their hearts before such things and display submission to them, mountains, etc. Granted, there is a vast difference between this type of worship of material objects and transcendental affection towards the Lord, Chinmaya Bhagavat Bhakti. Yes, there's a distinction between complete worship of objects like the Aboriginals of Australia. They would worship all the aspects of nature. That's how they survived in nature. They lived practically like animals themselves, but they were in tune with the supreme movement of all creatures, of the supreme consciousness. Therefore, they didn't destroy. The Aboriginals were there for 40,000 years and they didn't even leave a footprint. Now, the white man has been there for something like 250 years and completely devastated, practically half of Australia. That's just an example of how man responds to sensitive topics. This is all because Kali Yuga is in sway. Kali Maharaj wants it like this, that the human civilization is destined to suffer. And in that suffering, Krishna knows that the living entity will call out to the Supreme much more easily. If he's really backed up against the wall, then he'll call. This is to know the extremity of our suffering. Bilby, you can interrupt me with any comment you want to make as we're going through. It'll be appreciated. Still, when such ignorant people adopt a mood of gratitude to God and reverence toward material objects, it gradually produces a positive effect. Therefore, if one examines the situation logically, one cannot ascribe any fault to them. So he's not criticizing. He's just laying out the map. This is how it is. There's no argument or contention with this. This is just how it is, how it has evolved. Meditation on the formless, all-pervading feature of the Lord and offering namaz or other types of prayers to an impersonal aspect of the Lord are also devoid of pure transcendent love. So how are these methods any different from the worship of a cat, for example? You understand what he's saying? It's amazing. He's just completely pulled the carpet out from the mullah. The mullah was very cleverly saying, does that mean worship a cat or a dog? And Gaurachandra is saying, well, you worship mountains and you can worship anything with awe and reverence. But the quality of affection, if that is not there, if service is not there, then it's void, empty. For example, we consider that it is essential to arouse bhav towards Bhagavan by any means possible. Bhav is that symptom of prem. Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma Prem Suryavam Samyabhak. This is like the ray of prem is considered bhav. That is the description of bhav. The door leading to gradual elevation is firmly shut if people on any level of worship are ridiculed or condemned. Those who fall under the spell of dogmatism and thereby become sectarian lack the qualities of generosity and munificence. Yes, so true. If you just claim that only your path is the right path, but then someone will turn and say, well, you Vaishnavas are doing like that. But the point is, it is the right path. And it is the path that has a semblance in every other path. In every other path, you can pull any particle of Dharma within Confucianism, for example, or any other religion, any aspect of Dharma, you can relate it back to the Veda. There is an origin. The origin goes back to antiquity with Lord Brahma and the creation. Is there any philosophy or religion that explains the creation in such absolute minute detail of how it's come from Mahavishnu through the glance carried by Shambhu into the Adara Shakti, agitated by time and the jiva and the three modes of material nature, and the whole discussion and manifestation of this cosmic world? Not only that, but all the personalities who go to as progenitors like Dasha in the Bhagavatam, etc., and all the other personalities that are described in great minute detail. Who were their sons, who were their sons, who were their sons, who were their sons, etc. Right back. So the authenticity is totally intact. It's not just a dream on some level.
That is why.
Yes. The door leading to gradual elevation is firmly shut if people on any level of worship are ridiculed or condemned. So yes, what he's saying here is very important, that even the Muslims have to be honored if they're worshipping. The Christians have to be honored if they're worshipping. But if they are real Christians, if they are real Muslims, they will want to inquire further about their Ishtadev. I don't think it's very inspiring when you go into a church and you see a man crucified on a cross. I don't know how that can generally inspire love in the heart of a conditioned soul, really and truly. I mean, this is the symbol that is represented in, he died for us. You know, it doesn't seem strong enough for me to actually have faith in that personally, but others may be, and if they are, then their worship should be encouraged. But unless the object of developing your love with God is encouraged, then where is the progress in religion? Religion has to be progressive. Prem is progressive. Bhav is progressive. The word love, to love, it's a verb. It's progressive. It must be going somewhere. What is the destination? The Vedic destination is very clear. It's Krishna Prem, Gora Prem, Radha Dasyam, etc. It's very, very clear. And all the support for that conclusion, destination is there. And the method in how to attain that conclusion is also there, absolutely crystal clear. And it's not a great imposition for the consciousness to actually do that, because we understand it's the nature of the jiva to possess. We said yesterday that kriti sadhya bhavat sadhya bhavasya sarana nitya siddhyasya bhavasya. Nitya siddhyasya, this perfection, is this bhav is residing in the heart, in potential of the jiva, just like a seed. It just has to be watered and the son of Krishna to bring that out. Those who fall under the spell of dogmatism and thereby become sectarian lack the qualities of generosity and munificence. I think that's a beautiful sentence. Generosity and munificence are qualities of respect that are part of the Vaishnava mood, to be generous and munificent. That means giving. Krishna comes only to give. Mahaprabhu comes only to give, this Karunamayi Shakti. It's only to give, to benedict, always this munificence. But if you're thinking that you have the complete exclusive monopoly of something, you're abusing it. You're not actually giving it. You can abuse it, you know, in a selfish way. It has to be this. Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments many times on this: sectarianism is the greatest enemy of truth. When you try to just clamp it down, oh, my Sangha's the best, your Sangha's no good, this place is no. If we don't see the beauty in everywhere, but still we have to find our own personal focus, because each individual is different. Each individual has a different rasa with Krishna. Every jiva in existence has a separate rasa with Krishna. That is why they ridicule and condemn others who do not worship in the same way as they do. This is a great mistake on their part. Like if we look at the wars, if we look at Christianity and Islam, they have just fought against each other ever since their conceptions. We had the Crusaders, then we had the Turks, what they call them, the Ottoman Empire and all this fighting. How many people have died in the name of Christianity? Billions over the centuries, right? And how many people have the Hindus invaded in the last 100,000 years? They have not invaded anywhere. The Hindu culture has not invaded any country. In 100,000 years, there's no history of that. So it's based, this Vedic civilization, on respect. Respect is a godly quality. And we see it even today in Vedic culture. We were today amongst millions of people viewing Lord Jagannath. There was no aggressiveness anywhere. There was only a mood of devotion towards Lord Jagannath. All people crowded. The external was very austere, baking hot, and all crushed together. And it was, for a long time, you would imagine that somebody would become irritated by that. I didn't see any irritation the whole time we were there. What, 3-4 hours or something? There was no irritation. Amongst millions of people, this is culture. If this had taken place in Europe or America, there would have been some types of irritation somewhere, guaranteed. They would not have had this quality of tolerance and patience. And they wouldn't certainly not have had the devotion that everyone had for Lord Jagannath, accepting him as the Lord of the universe. So this is very wonderful. And no one was trying to berate another person for worshipping the way that they expected that they were worshipping themselves. They were all different kirtan groups. They all had their own particular flavor and rasa, and it was all fully respected. It's an example of a beautiful culture which doesn't exist outside of India, I don't believe. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. Mula. Then must we conclude that everything is God and that to worship anything at all is worship of God? That's actually correct. That would mean that worship of sinful objects or the sinful tendency is also worship of God. Do all these different types of worship please God? Well, I'm glad he's asking what pleases God. That's a great step up, yes, that he's actually thinking. Yes. Gaurachand, we do not say that everything is God. On the contrary, God is distinct from all these things. God creates and controls everything, and everything has a relationship with him. So it's not all God, but still he creates it, he manifests it. It's all a part of him, it's all manifesting from him. All material elements are manifesting ultimately from him. And it's actually coming from Brahman, from his sevaks, etc. The thread of that relationship runs through everything. And that is why one may inquire about the presence of God in all things. You see, when the mullah was asking, is everything is God, he was saying it rather sarcastically. And Gaurachand was agreeing. Yes, it's not God directly. The bed is not God, but indirectly it's coming from God. So it is a part of God. Everything in the creation. What can exist without his energy, his Shakti? But it's energy. It's not him. This was where the Sampradayas were having difficulty before Mahaprabhu advented. They were all saying Vastu Parinamvad, that everything is emanating from God. But Mahaprabhu said, no, no, no. Everything's emanating from Shakti, from Swarup Shakti. It's all coming from the energy of God. This is where it's all manifesting from, not from God directly. Our Gurudev has said many, many times that Krishna is like Nirvishesh Brahm without Sri Radhika. She is the manifestation. From Swarup Shakti is coming Baladev. Baladev is the first manifestation from Krishna, but through Swarup Shakti. That's how it's actually manifest. Everything is coming through Swarup Shakti. This Sandini, Sangvit, Pladini Shaktis, they're all manifesting from Swarup Shakti. Then Jiva Shakti is manifesting from there. All are manifesting. Tatastha Shakti, etc., all manifesting from Swarup Shakti. Para Swarup Shakti is described. So everything is coming from God. The thread of that relationship runs through everything, and that is why one may inquire about the presence of God in all things. As one inquires into the presence of God in all things, one can gradually taste or experience the supreme, transcendental, and conscious entity. That taste is Bhav. The more we understand that taste, that relationship. So this is what I described before. All of these first 10 chapters are all principally about Sambandha Gyan, which means our relationship with Krishna. When that relationship with Krishna is solid, then we can hear the Abhideya, then we can hear the Prayojan. But that relationship with Krishna, that has to be that platform. It's like the first 9 cantos of the Bhagavatam are expressing the same conception, that this platform of Sambandha, all these magnificent forms of the Lord being revealed to Dhruva, for example. Well, I think it was an 8-armed form came to Dhruva, and all these different manifestations of the Lord through to Prithu Maharaj, it was the Kumaras, and Krishna came to that yagya also, and all the different manifestations. And Sankarshan is there also with Chitraketu. And all these, they're all very Aishwarya personalities, but it's creating a great respect for that Supreme Lord. And then we can fully appreciate the intimacy of the 10th canto, that this Madhurya transcends that Aishwarya. It doesn't negate the Aishwarya, it just transcends it. As one inquires into the presence of God in all things, one can gradually taste or experience the supreme, transcendental, and conscious entity. This is expressed in the sutra, Jignasa Asvadana Vadi. Is that the right translation?
Yes.
Inquiry leads to experience. Yes, one must inquire into, what's the sutra? Artha, that the Prabhupada would always, Artha Jignashu. Prabhupada would always say, he would quote,
Atato Brahma Jignasa.
yes, this verse. Atato Brahma
Brahma
Jignasa. Always inquire into the truth. You are all learned pundits. If you kindly consider this matter in a generous mood, you will understand. We Vaishnavas are completely disinterested in material things, and we do not want to enter into long drawn-out arguments. If you kindly permit us, we shall now go to hear the sublime musical narration of Sri Chaitanya Mangal. It was not evident what conclusion the Mullah Sahib reached as a result of this discussion. After a short silence, he said, "I've been pleased to hear your point of view. On another day, I will return and inquire further. Now it is late, and I wish to return home." He and his party then mounted their horses and departed for Saksika Paragan. The Babajis loudly uttered the name of Sri Hari with great delight and entered the temple to hear the recitation of Sri Chaitanya Mangal. So it's not conclusive what effect the words had, because it's as if Bhaktivinoda Thakur is taking on the whole Islamic population here, you know? So you can't just do that in a day. You can't expect to have, because this fanaticism is there in all sectarian cults, just like there's fanatical Christians. They want to kill the Muslims. There's fanatical Muslims. They want to kill the Christians. This fanaticism is not going to bring peace or love to Krishna. So I think today we will stop our discussion here, because we've reached chapter 12 and we can begin chapter 12 fresh tomorrow, which is Nitya Dharma and Sadhana. And this is when Brajanath is going to be introduced to us. So this chapter on Islam is very beautiful to reflect on and meditate, especially for preachers in the world who are challenged about the deity and idolatry. The words that Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes here are very, very logical and very rational and beautiful. If this chapter is fully imbibed by all preachers on the circuits in the road, on the road, then it'll be very strengthening for them to purify any of these misconceptions about idolatry. Because always in our temples we have deities, and always there are Christians or Muslims or different groups that will condemn that, because they haven't understood the principle of worshipping the form, the murti. Without worshipping this form, what will you do? Most forms, most religious groups in the West today, if they're not Christian or Muslim, they will be worshippers of the Brahman. They will be like quasi-spiritual groups doing their mystical yoga, their Vipassana, Buddhistic and Nirvishesh Brahm, all these impersonal places which don't have a murti to support them. The very important part about having the deity is to reinforce the personal conception. It's very easy for us to drop into an impersonal place because we've just come from an impersonal place. We've come from the Brahmajyoti. That is where we manifested from. Lord Balaram, he manifested the jivas in the Brahmajyoti. And then with the Tatastha Shakti energy and that decision-making marginal energy. And then we had to make a decision between serving Krishna or serving the material energy. And we all chose to serve the material energy. Then we came into the body of Mahavishnu. And then from the body of Mahavishnu, we all came into this world. So this is how we're manifesting in this world. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai, Srila Jaiva-Dharma ki jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol,
Hari Hari.
Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Bevacha, Patitanam Bhavanibhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You did it? Well done.